Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our California Nevada chat, October 17th. My name is Caitlin Doyle. I'm the Executive Director for the Northern California PGA. On behalf of myself and our President, Nick Bailey, and our colleagues from the Southern California PGA section, President Allison Kurt and Executive Director Nikki Gatch, welcome this Friday morning. Today we have a special guest filling in for Nikki as she is out this morning. So let's all welcome back Mr. Tom Addis, past president of the PGA of America and past executive director of the Southern California PGA. So we're happy we have you on this morning, Tom, and want to maybe toss it to you for some opening morning remarks if you have anything before we get into the show.
Yeah, thanks, Caitlin. And maybe you can hear my two birds, Par and Birdie, in the background there. Two great parakeets. But it's nice to be back and subbing for Nikki on the California PGA, California Nevada PGA chat. It's been a long time, and we have a great guest today. So it'll be fun and look forward to it. Thanks.
Thanks, Tom. And in addition to obviously our legislation updates later on from Craig Kessler, Executive Director of California Alliance for Golf, we have another great guest this morning, Dr. Rick Sessinghaus, who's the co-founder and director of Flow Code Golf Academy. So I'm going to run through Rick's background here real quick in his bio, and then we'll toss it over to Rick. So with over 28 years of coaching experience, Dr. Rick Sessinghaus is a PGA member and a neuroscience-based performance expert who helps golfers of all levels play better and enjoy the game more. He's the founder and director of Flow Code, a unique online performance platform that teaches the latest strategies, principles, and techniques to achieve the state of flow, the zone where we perform our best. He is also the author of Golf, the Ultimate Mind Game, and was also the swing and mental coach for two-time major champion Colin Morikawa for 18 years. He has coached many elite junior, college, and professional golfers using his Flow Code system that combines technical skills with mental and emotional skills. He holds a doctorate in applied sports psychology and was named top 50 instructor in America by Golf Digest. He is passionate about sharing his insights and expertise with audiences through engaging in customized presentations. Awesome. Well, we're honored to have you here this morning, Rick, and obviously being a local SoCal PGA member. I know a lot of the people on the chat know who you are, but yeah, thanks for being with us. And we're going to toss it over to you and kind of let you go through. I know you have some PowerPoint slides, and yeah, we'll toss it over to you.
Sounds great. Thank you, Caitlin. It's great to be here. I've been very, very fortunate to be part of the Southern California PGA for all my career. My first job was at Griffith Park Golf Course in Los Angeles, working under Tom Barber and Jerry Barber, who are very, very well known in the professional community. So I wanted to share a little bit today about something I shared at the California Coaching Summit, a little bit about junior development, a little bit about Flow Code and my philosophy, and then Tom and I will chat a little bit about some other topics. So love to share them. I'm going to share my screen here. Is when my philosophy has evolved throughout the years, and a lot of that has been just from the type of player that I've coached. But the ultimate goal as a coach is that we want people to shoot lower scores and enjoy the game more. And early on in my career of being a swing instructor, certainly I wanted people to hit the ball solid, hit the ball fairly straight, putt better, and those type of things. So I do come from a swing mechanic standpoint first. Then I started to talk a little bit more about the body and the different assessments that are used. But then ultimately, it was all about the mind for me. So I really went in depth of what the mental game was, not only for a adult golfer, but then I really fell in love with developing junior golfers. So I'm going to be skipping through a few of these slides, but some of the things that I wanted to share is how I did develop Colin from an 8-year-old to a 2-time major champion winner. I just came back from the Ryder Cup with him. I've seen him through all the ups and downs that golf provides, and seeing that a lot of what that was certainly he's talented. Please, he's hand-eye coordination's great, but I think he was very at an early age ahead of the game when it came to the mental game, which I'll discuss a little bit more. So I've had a long history with him, been able to experience some of the I mean, being at the PGA Championship when he won was just phenomenal. Being at the U.S. Amateur when he was there, and just seeing his development is one of the highlights of my career. I think, with the SCPGA, of course, it means a lot because Colin played a lot of his junior golf in SCPGA and then Toyota Tour Cup and stuff. So I know it means a lot to him to be able to utilize those tournaments to develop as a player, because really, yes, we can give them a lot of instruction, but until somebody has the opportunity to perform in different tournaments, we're not sure what the type of player they are yet, right? Because now we have pressure, we have other things that build with that. So very, very quickly on his golf swing, I am not a systems-based coach, so it's not he has to fit into a system. What I do share with people that they don't know is that up to about the age of 16, he was actually somebody who hit draws. Now he is world famous to know he hits cuts and hits fades, but he couldn't do that at an early age because physically he wasn't able to perform that. And what I mean by that is we had him assessed when he was 15 years old physically, and he had a little bit of a weak left side. His left glute wasn't strong enough, and he would tilt back, which would change his path numbers, and he would be more draw biased. Not that he hit big hooks, okay? But why I'm sharing that with you is that the coaches that are on this, or even maybe you're a parent of a child, their physical development is going to affect what they can and cannot do with a golf swing, and you're going to have some preferences that'll be kicked in as we go. So I knew kind of where he was at a certain. Once he got stronger, and then he wanted to hit fades, it wasn't my choice. We then had to develop a swing to create that, but his physical body had to be able to do those things first. Okay, is where I'm going with it. So we did build in a little bit of the body stuff, 15 and older. When he was at Cal Berkeley in his college, he certainly had fitness there. I'm not going to say how golf specific it was, but he got stronger, and it was good for him. Obviously, on the PGA Tour, he has a full-time trainer. Colin has always been a calm demeanor. And with that, I think his tempo, which is known to be very deliberate, I think matches his personality very, very well. So even at an early age, he was pretty smooth back and such. So I allow the personality of the player to come out as we go. One of my big things is if somebody's going to come to me for working with a junior golfer, I am hoping they're going to stay with me for a long time relationship wise, which means they're into long-term development over short-term fixes. So often with coaching, we have players who come to me, oh, you need to fix me for this next tournament. Oh my gosh, I'm hitting all over the place. And I understand that pain point that we have as coaches have to help them with. Yet I think juniors need to be looked upon a little bit differently because of all the changes that are going to happen throughout, not only physically, maturity wise, all the different stresses, is that parents need to be patient that this is a long-term development. Colin never won a PG, or excuse me, he never won an AJGA event in his life. Does that mean he didn't have a good junior career? Of course not. But we have these real unrealistic expectations of what juniors should do instead of, are we building them to have skills that are going to help them later on down the road? And so we very much had long-term plans over short-term fixes. Fortunately for me, he bought in on that. The parents bought in on that, which is very, very important nowadays. Okay. One quick story that I think epitomizes him as a junior and still to this day is his ability to learn. He's always curious. He's never made an excuse. I've never heard him make an excuse of anything. And he played a tournament in West Palm Beach at the PGA National Bear Trap, as we know it. And he shot, I think, 84, and which was kind of his highest round he'd ever shot in an AJGA event. And he came back for our lesson. And before I could say anything, he just simply shared, Rick, we have to work on flighting my irons because my ball flight, I couldn't control my ball flight in the wind. And I'm like, oh, wow. He's taking ownership. He's taking responsibility. And he wants to do something about it. Is a lot different than other juniors that I hear that say, oh, Rick, I played bad because it was windy. And then they just leave it at that. They have an excuse. Not that they want to get better at it. It's like, well, I would have played better if it was the wind. He said, I didn't play well. The wind, because I didn't have a strategy for it, and I need to learn how to flight my irons. This is what we need to work on. So that became something we worked on. Now Again, great ball striker. He doesn't have problems when it's windy. So that mindset was really, really important as he developed. He has this unbelievable mindset of again being calm, being very focused, never having excuses. Learns. He's not, I would say, very talkative, but when he talks, he means what he says and what he's going to ask. So if he has a question, you better listen and better pay attention and better give him some answers, which I really appreciate. Highly intelligent. He's always looking for feedback on that. And again, just very, very curious. And that as a coach is awesome to have somebody who wants to learn at all times. One of my philosophies with all players, but especially juniors, is about course management. Taking them on the golf course is more important than spending time on the range. 70% of my golf lessons with Colin were done on a golf course in a setting. We were on either at Chevy Chase Country Club, a 9-hole little country club here in the Glendale area, and we would hit different golf shots. Could we work on his mechanics? Of course we could, but we're doing it in the context of playing golf, not just let's go hit, 27 irons in a row and work on takeaway. Did we do that sometimes? Yeah, at times, but I wanted to see, could he play golf? Could he make decisions? The variability of the game, those type of things is why I'm a big proponent of on-course instruction. And I would take him on there and I would do a simple exercise with him. Is a lot of it was scenario, ask him what his solution was, he executes it, and then we learn from there. So I would have him, I would throw him in a variable spot. Let's say in this case, we've got a ball in the rough slightly above him. I would ask, okay, Colin, what's your plan? I'm not giving him any information other than read the lie, read the situation, what's the best solution? And he would come up with that and he would hit a shot. Awesome. Now, I always wanted him to have immediate feedback of what did he do well on that? What could he have done better? And I would immediately give him another ball. And here was because a lot of people are critical, like, oh, that's a bad shot, and they don't know how to make it better. But if I give them a second ball, they can go, oh, wow, I didn't know the ball was so far above my feet. I didn't know this ball was going to come out low left. I'm going to change club choice. To me, I want them to be learning from their own experience. So I would always give them a second ball. After the second ball, I would give them a third ball, and I would provide what I think was the solution. You know what? Maybe you need to open the face up a little bit more because of that thick rough. Because that ball tends to go a little bit more left, let's aim this more right. And I would now coach, but I always was interested in what the player was thinking before I just instructed them. And so we did a lot of our lessons on the course in this type of scenario, whether it's a tee shot, a second shot, a chip, a flop shot, it didn't matter. Multiple shots, but always learning from each repetition. Okay. I just want to briefly talk about another player I'm working with right now, Jaden Soong. He's one of the top 15-year-olds in the country. He won the SCGA Amateur at 14 years old. Yes, the amateur, not the junior, the amateur. The youngest to do that. You can see the trophy's bigger than him over here. He youngest by far. This is an event. Obviously, Patrick Cantlay's won and Tiger Woods has won. And he's just a phenomenal talent. He came to me when he was 11 years old, and he was already a very, very highly skilled golfer. And what was different about him than Colin is, for Colin, I was his swing coach and his putting coach and his short game and his mental coach. Jaden and a lot of these younger players now in this generation have a whole team behind them. It's like a professional player now. And so I'm his swing coach and his mental coach. And just to see his development, he was already a very good player when I started working with him with 11 years old. But he keeps pushing himself, and he's had these great accomplishments at a very early age. He won the California State high school championship this past spring. 62 at Poppy Hills is pretty dang good. And he's won a lot of SCPGA events, Toyota Tour Cup, so on and so forth. So his development has also come a lot about with the SCPGA and the wonderful junior tours that we have down here. He's definitely learned a lot from that. But why I wanted to show his story a little bit more is because he has a different personality, different skill sets than Colin did. Yet I still look at developing him long term. and knowing that he's 15, he's a sophomore in high school, he wants to play high level Division I, he wants to play professional golf. So how do I help him develop for when he turns into college, right? That's different than, hey, I got to get ready for, he just played an AJGA event at Satakoy, right? There's a balance there. Okay. Like I said, he has a team around him already. He's got a fitness person, a putting person. We've got people doing force plates. So things have accelerated in the junior development where there is more pressure early on for ranking points and NIL, that's a whole debatable thing too, is that these players are highly competitive and they're given so many opportunities to play nationally and to get a lot of that competition underneath their belt. They're ready. I mean, it's unbelievable now, even just in a short time from when Colin was a junior golfer, it keeps accelerating. With that comes challenges, I think more mental than it does physical, of these players feeling like they're having to perform at a high level all the time, ranking points, getting recruited earlier and earlier, NIL money. I mean, there's a lot more that this younger generation has to take into account, social media and so on and so forth. So last thing with the juniors is where these two are very similar, extremely competitive. Part of my philosophy is to always compete against my players the last 5 minutes of a session, whether it's closest to the pin, chip shot, and to see how they perform and how they take that on. These two want to kill me all the time and beat me, which is a good thing. They're not going to make excuses. They love pushing outside their comfort zones. Now, this is where a little caveat here, like Colin rarely played outside of his age group, just so you know, because we kind of kept him in there. He would play well up there. Jaden's been slightly different because he has in his own age group played so well that yes, he goes play in an SCGA amateur and he wins it. So I never felt he was so far out, like you've seen other juniors or 12-year-olds now playing against 16-year-olds, which I think can be ridiculous at time. But they both wanted to push their comfort zones out. They love to learn, and I've been very fortunate that the parents have been fantastic. I know that doesn't always occur, but we have supportive parents who want their child to enjoy what they're doing. They certainly want them to have a great attitude. They want to have them have the work ethic and everything. But I've never heard from either one unrealistic expectations from the parents, only putting pressure on results, only they've been phenomenal. So I've had the opposite happen much too often. These parents that are delusional, who put too much pressure on a kid at 13, 14, 15. Everything's about results. There's nothing about learning, nothing about enjoyment. And unfortunately, that's something that we as an industry, we need to help as we go along. And that's back to the importance, right? We have to educate these parents better. A lot of these juniors are jumping coaches a lot because they're going for short-term fixes, and the child is only getting positive reinforcement when they play well, instead of, wow, I was really proud of how you bounced back after that double bogey. Let's keep going, right? They're not being reinforced for their behavior. They're only being reinforced for results, unfortunately. So a lot of things that we can do that me and my company are actually looking forward to helping in that space. So I think I just want the challenges that are occurring now in junior development is we have these players that have teams of coaches early on. There's so many tournaments to play in. I think people are now almost over competing instead of picking and choosing where they should be best. Younger ages, they're being way too much in the technical emphasis that their swing has to look a certain way. Speed is becoming important, and I understand that. Some juniors do not need speed training as early as it's being put out there. I'm seeing more injuries than ever before, so that's problematic. And we've just already talked about parents and expectations is a key part. College is getting to be a serious business nowadays, and many of you may have seen some of these unbelievable practice facilities that Alabama it created. I think it was $40 million. Even on some smaller scales, like I've worked with Santa Clara, they built something out. San Diego State building. I mean, it's now, wow, college golf is prime time. There's a lot more events on Golf Channel, and with that, there's more pressure to perform and the rankings. And like I said, these college teams, even these college coaches now, they're expected to have top 20 programs now. It's not just, oh yeah, golf is this nice sport that we have. It's like, no, you're gonna win conferences and stuff like that. So it's that push for college golf becoming so important. And then now you have PGAU, where these seniors potentially could get a PGA Tour card, Corn Ferry. Things have accelerated very, very quickly. So as coaches, we have to be aware of that. We have to help our students understand and navigate some of these challenges, which again are more mental and emotional than they are physical. So just a quick background on where my coaching philosophy is shifted to the mental game and why is I grew up in a very sports-minded household. I was a football player, baseball, all that stuff before golf. I had some, I'll put it bluntly, anger issues, especially with golf. I did not know how to deal with poor shots. I went to counseling. It helped a little bit. I played golf at Cal State Northridge, mediocre D1 player, but unfortunately the frustration and everything took over. So I was trying to figure out for my own issues why I couldn't deal with these things, and went to sports psychologist and got helped a little bit, but I wanted more answers. So I went kind of down the rabbit hole of the mental game starting just after my college experience to figure out more things to help me. But of course, now as I started coaching, I wanted to help those junior golfers who had frustration and those other golfers. So that's where I kind of started to go down that rabbit hole. I got a doctorate in sports psychology, wrote a book. I've done a lot of research in this field called flow. And flow is, most people say, oh, you're playing in the zone. And that's fine. That's a term that's been used a lot. I use the word flow because that's what's actually researched in university settings. A flow state has a certain set of brainwave activity, neurochemicals. It's an actual state we're in. We can measure it. And what's more importantly, what we're starting to prove in these last 10 years is there's a reverse engineering of it. And I call it flow code. What is your code to be in a flow state? Peak performance, optimal experience. We feel our best, we perform our best. That's what I want from my students. Okay. And so I've done a lot more deeper dive on that part of performance than ever before. Right. And yet I believe now the future is going to be with the mental side of being able to train these skills and measure these skills as we go. So I've been fortunate in the last month is that I opened up an indoor facility here in Burbank, California, where I have 2 great simulators, but I start using different technologies. I use something called Focus Calm that measures brainwave activity. I use a heart rate monitor that measures heart rate variability. I'm using the NeuroPeak Intel belt, which is measuring not only your breath rate, but also the mechanics of your breath, because breathing is a fundamental part. We have an app for flow code. We want to help people understand how to build those fundamentals of breath work and visualization and meditation, and how they can change their state before the round and during a shot. And I'm very kind of excited about what's to come with all the virtual reality and all these cool things that I think are actually going to help mental game much more as we go. So wanted to throw that to give you kind of context of where I'm at. I use these different products in my training. What's great about these first 2, especially the first one, which is Focus Calm, I'm measuring brainwave activity, and then I could actually hit a golf ball with it on. So I can start getting some mental metrics as they're actually performing. Has been very important for me to see if there's correlations between somebody's ability to focus, calming the brain waves down, and then how that relates to their performance. I'm gonna not get too much into this, but I'll have only a couple more slides, and then Tom and I can talk a little bit. But I have a kind of a fundamental philosophy that performance is state dependent. What state are you in mentally, emotionally, and physically? Mentally, what am I focusing on? What am I thinking about? That could, and it will, trigger an emotional response. Okay. That emotional response could be confidence. It could be doubt. It could be fear. It could be excitement, right? And that emotion then kicks in and affects us physically. Okay, physically, how am I feeling? Am I feeling tight? Am I feeling loose? That state is going to affect your performance. Okay. And I think I didn't know that as much early on when I was a swing instructor and just put the club into positions and stuff like that. But somebody's anxiety, somebody's stress response could affect how they learn and could affect how they feel. So I contrast two basic states. One is a fear state, which all of us have felt on the golf course, let's be honest. Um, some of that, most of it starts with being distracted by the future, looking at the shot or the situation as a threat. Okay. We look, it's a threat. Uh-oh, I don't want that. And that threat now would kick in doubt. And this is where we would end up feeling it is a stress response, fight or flight. Fight as I tighten up. And in golf, I might steer it. Don't go left, right? And I steer it. That's a fight response. Flight, I'm uncomfortable. Let's get this over as quickly as possible. And my golf swing used to get short and quick, and I used to hook it. So this stress response was triggered well earlier with what we were thinking about, how we were thinking about it, emotionally, what it triggered, and physical. Okay. I'm not going to get too much into the other stuff that I coach, which is post-shot routine and how we learn from shot instead of being critical. But if we looked at a flow state, somebody in a flow state is completely immersed in the present moment. Okay. They're paying attention to the lie and the wind, what's relevant. Instead of looking at the shot as a threat, they're looking at it as a challenge. All right, let's take this on because now we're taking it on a threat we want to recoil. When somebody's in a flow state, they're confident. They believe their skills match the challenge in front of them. And flow always has clear goals. I'm clear on what I want. I'm hitting this 7 iron 15 feet left of the hole, mid trajectory. It's going to fade back 6 feet, a land 163 yards, 8-foot putt. Instead of, well, I hope I hit the green, just don't go in the bunker, right? That wishy-washy language. So clear goals, very, very important for flow. Other things with flow is somebody's actually, and this might sound weird, doing it for the joy of doing it. Okay. Call that an autotelic experience. We're doing it for intrinsic reason. Man, we love golf. I can't wait to hit this golf shot is different than I'm playing golf because my parents are making me, because I need to get a college scholarship. I need to win, right? And it's all extrinsic reasons. So flow is a lot about just being immersed in that moment because you want to be in that moment and such. And there's other things that go with that. But I just wanted to at least share a little bit of my philosophy on that. And, we at Flow Code, I have a business where we certify coaches, we have stuff for juniors, and we have an app. And again, this gives you some basics of within the app as we go. But I'm very excited about that philosophy getting out more and more. We have certified 200 golf courses coaches worldwide. I'm traveling to Thailand on Monday to work with some juniors in Thailand for a few days. So it's really exciting to see that this is growing and that people are open to mental game training like ever before. So I wanted to share all that. I know I talk really fast, but I want to be able to have ability to be able to have some questions and go from there.
Yeah, that's awesome, Rick. Thank you. Well done, and appreciate you sharing that with everyone. I personally have a few questions. Tom might have a couple, and I think we have some in the chat. But certainly, if any of you guys on right now have a couple questions, please drop them in the Q&A box, and we'll get to them. But I love that image of the heart rate variability, and it was making me think of, because I was at the Ryder Cup this year, and it was making me think on TV how they had the display of all the players' whoop bands and what their heart rate was when they were hitting the shots. I think it was like Justin Thomas had his on, and it was showing how high his heart rate was going for some of those, shots down the stretch. But I think maybe jump into that. I mean, obviously you were there, right, with Colin at the Ryder Cup, but how do you guys approach an event like that together? And
yeah, I love the Ryder. This is my second Ryder Cup. I was there at Whistling Straits. I was there this year. And I'm always fascinated with, back in the day, sports psychology was like, be relaxed, be relaxed. And yet Ian Poulter, Sergio Garcia dominating at Ryder Cups, they were far from relaxed. Okay.
Yeah.
You see it this year where Rory was not relaxed. He played great. You see, JT not relaxed, Bryson not. And so I'm fascinated with the state they're in. Doesn't always mean relaxed. Back to heart rate. Heart rate is not always the greatest indicator that somebody is going to play well or not. Okay. Rory's heart rate was whatever 130s or something like that, and then he hits the ball to 2 feet. Okay. How they harness that is part of it. Okay. Now there's another layer called heart rate variability, which is the how the heart and the mind are connected, and that shows us more of a stress response because elite athletes, basketball, their heart rate's going up all over the place. Okay. But that doesn't mean it's a bad thing. Okay. Heart rate variability, if it's not very good, means I'm stressed and I am freaking out and I can't think straight and my heart's high. Then we got a problem, right? But it's a matter of what was the environment going to do to the player. Colin is a pretty low key guy, yet especially at Whistling Straits when yes they played much better. There was more fist pumping, there was more on that end, and yet I didn't see his game go down. In fact, it probably went up a notch. There's a lot of engagement. There's a lot of energy there, right?
Mhm.
The tricky part is that sustainable in a 72 hole event? Could Ian Poulter back in the day do 72 holes where he's like this after everyone's like, I don't know. That's a lot to ask. So in the moment, it could spike focus. It can get us somebody in the present moment. But I think some of these players were able to now get back to a baseline fairly quick, which is to me is amazing on that. But yeah, people yelling at you, people, it's like, how are you going to perform from that?
Yeah, short and quick and left is very familiar to me too, Rick. But staying on the Ryder Cup and you were one of the first, I believe, to really mix the mental and the tech, and you've been doing it for so long. And back to the Ryder Cup, which is a great questions in my mind. Talk about the fear factor, the fear state that you mentioned, and how that ties into what you were just describing, and in particular with the Ryder Cup, because that
Right.
seems to be the event that fear really bears its head.
Yeah, I think it's a great question because when you play for yourself week to week to week, you want to make the cut, you want to contend, right? Who you let down is let down yourself. Maybe you let down your coach or whatever, but you don't let them down, right? Now we're in a team environment. Not only are we in a team environment, we're playing for our country. We're playing for a captain that they all respected. You have vice captains, and you start layering in all this. There could be the thought of, I don't want to let anybody down, which becomes a little bit of a fear. Don't screw this up. And I think, and I don't have privy to the Europeans and what they were doing, but I think they had it such a safe space that you played for your team, but never to that you thought you were going to let them down. You're just playing for your team and we're united and we're all as one. And hey, we'll have your back if you don't fill it up. I think the Americans, I'm just speaking for my own, what I observed, I think they really did play hard for Keegan. I think Keegan was a captain who brought a lot of passion. And the vice captains, for the most part, felt everybody was prepared, ready to go. But I don't know when they're going to that first tee. Who are they playing for? And are they afraid of making a mistake because they don't want to let people down? That's where that fear flow thing is. Like, I don't want to screw this up. It's a threat. I think Europeans go, man, this is a challenge. Let's take it on. I can't wait to win on foreign soil. And there might be a little bit of different association with what it meant.
You know, excuse me, Caitlin, just one more if you don't mind.
You're good. You're good.
Paul Azinger, way back when, described a little bit of this fear in the Ryder Cup. He says, when you walk to the first tee at the Ryder Cup, you can't feel anything. You can't feel the bottom of your feet. You can't feel your arms and hands. And you have to go play one of the most fearful shots you'll ever play. And does that come into it at all? How does a player get beyond that mental capacity, if you will, of that my hands and my feet and the whole deal?
Yeah, I think we first start with knowing you're going to be different on that first tee. Okay. But I always go back to mindset first. How are you going to view that shot if it's, I don't want to embarrass myself, is a lot different than what a cool challenge and experience I get to have. man, I get to represent my guy. Instead of, holy crap, please get this ball airborne. That's a completely different mindset for the same exact situation. So now, once we are experiencing this, we can do certain breath work, certain things with our practice swings, certain things to try to minimize how much it spikes. So we have some physiological things. But I think to your point, it's back to how am I viewing this? And some of them, man, I mean, to have Bryson hit the first tee shot, it seems like, well, of course he's going to hit the first. He's wants to hit and try to drive the green, and he was looking forward to that. Somebody else in that position to start us off maybe would have like, oh man, I'm the first. Oh, I don't want to mess up, right? So I think it's mindset first, then it's how do we shift the physiological response? Like I can't feel my hands. Okay, maybe do some little bit longer exhale breath. And that might have been done on the range, by the way, to try to prep for man. It's only going to get wound up as we go. But as much as I love to prepare people, there is nothing like that first tee shot because I'm getting nervous and I don't even have to hit a ball, So
Oh, yeah. Thanks. Yeah.
you bet.
Great insight.
Yeah, that's awesome. I got a question, kind of, Rick, about just like PGA members. Obviously, as coaches, we're helping our students with these things and the mental game, but like, just us as PGA members, we play in events and section events and whatnot, but in reality, right, we don't get to play and practice as much as we want. And I just know from personal experience, when I go out there, a lot of the times to practice, it's like I'm thinking about work, I'm thinking about this, and it's like, how can I practice the flow and the things that you're teaching to prepare me for when I do play in a section event or something like that? And what would you encourage our members to think about or practice when they're out there?
Yeah, I think the first part is setting reasonable expectations. You know, I hate to use this term. I used to play competitive golf, right?
Yeah.
And then we have that one time a year we want to play in the section championship or maybe our chapter championship, and we go, okay, what's a reasonable expectation? I haven't played competitive golf in 3 years and I'm trying to do something. I think we have to be fair to ourselves first off and enjoy that this is cool that I get an opportunity to play and be with my colleagues and have some fun. We still want to play well. So it would be the I know it sounds so fundamental, but the pre-shot routine of playing to your strengths and making sure we're focused on what's relevant. And but I think it does start with mindset. And then again, I go back to little things of what's my attitude going to be on the golf course. A question I always ask for all my players is we can have a goal, and let's say you want to shoot whatever, par. Okay. But what are the behaviors that are going to need to be needed to help you with that? And behaviors is more of us a control. Behaviors is a standard. Hey, Rick, I'm going to commit to at least 90% of my shots today. How I'm going to do that is visualize each shot with as much clarity as possible. I'm going to go through my notes. I'm going to go. That's all in their control. Okay. We have to practice those things too, though. And I think the mental game, people say, yeah, that breath work, I'll do it when I'm nervous. It's like, no, you're not. You're going to default to what you were comfortable with in the first place. So I think there is a little bit of buildup of the smaller things to add up, reasonable expectations, have a game plan built around your strengths, and then just overall attitude. Say, wow, this is pretty cool that I get to once or twice a year get to compete.
Yeah, no, that's really good advice. I appreciate that, and it's timely. It's timely personally for me because I have a tournament coming up. But frankly, I was playing at the club nearby here in one of their events recently, and I was like nervous, and I'm like, why am I nervous? And it's like, well, because I don't play and practice nearly as much. I have to have reasonable expectations with this one. So that's helpful. We do have a couple questions from the group,
Sure.
so I'm going to ask this first one, which is a good question. How do you develop a strategy to adjust to course conditions, swing not working well off the tee during a round with enough time to like make up those few holes? Like, how do you kind of reset once you're going that way?
Yeah, great question. I had this the other day. Really, really good player. He plays for a high level D1 play. And we go, when does a shot become a pattern? So for instance, if I hit my first tee shot into the trees on the left, does that mean my second tee shot's going to go left? No, doesn't mean. But if I've hit 4 of my last 5 tee shots into the left trees, I may have a pattern. Okay. Now, is that pattern mental or physical? I would always argue is mental might be there's trouble on the right and I keep steering it away because I don't want to go right. I was never committed to it. But let's say it's physical and we know that that's a pattern. We can either play the pattern Or if we're more advanced, we have a fairway finder. We have another option on the table. We can go with 3-wood instead of driver. We could, if we know why the draw is happening, oh, I'm getting under plane again. I'm going to feel centered, right? If you know your patterns, you can intervene quicker. But I think
Mhm.
under pressure, people's minds are racing and they're in panic mode instead of saying, whoop, timeout. What's the shot I'm seeing? Can I change strategies first? Or what is there something mechanical? Or is there something mental that can be adjusted? And I don't know if two poor tee shots, three is the pattern, but I think people either throw away their strategy very early because they freak out. But I would always say, I always call them if thens. If blank happens, then I do blank. If in the first 8 holes I am 4 over par and I've got no control, I am then going to hit my cut off the tee and I'm going to take an extra club with my irons and grip down and hit 3/4 shots because I can hit it solid. What would be the strategy that you've already made up when the wheels are falling off?
Yeah, that's great. That's great advice for sure. Um, okay, this next one is a little bit longer. So I'm curious from a performance psychology standpoint, when Colin mentioned wanting chaos at the Ryder Cup, what was the underlining mental trigger or benefit he was aiming to activate? Was the idea to initiate arousal and competitive focus, or to use external energy as a motivational catalyst? In hindsight, do you think that kind of framing helped or hindered his performance and his team's performance under pressure?
Great question. And I'm not going to necessarily say should he have said it or anything like that. I think it was taken out of context anyways. I think part of all of the Americans were the start of that week trying to get the environment in such a way that was, of course, a home field advantage,
Yeah.
right? Chaos is a pretty strong word, but I think he knows because of the majors he's played in the President's Cups and all that stuff. He doesn't mind if chaos is happening because he's going to be in his little bit of bubble. So he believes that would be a strength for him. Now, did he play better or worse for that? I don't know. He played an alternate shot where Fleetwood and McIlroy are going unconscious, shooting a million under. So I don't think
Yeah.
he played particularly great, but I don't think he played bad. And then his singles match was okay. So I think for him, he knew he could handle chaos. In being on the home field advantage, he knew that potentially the negative would on the Europeans would certainly outweigh anything else. So yeah, I think it was more of this like, okay, as a team, let's get our um our gallery and our fans behind us, and
Mhm.
and that's how he described it in his presser.
Oh man. Awesome. Well, thank you, Rick. I think that was the
Yeah.
questions from the group, but I'm sure there'll be
Awesome.
more that roll in. But after this, hopefully we can send out your presentation to everyone, and if everyone's interested in learning more about flow code, they can scan the QR and contact
Perfect.
you and see you around SoCal. But we appreciate you being
Awesome.
here, and thanks for all your advice, and thanks for all you're doing too to support our members and associates and everything that you do for
Thank
the
you.
section. So we appreciate that.
Thank you. Thanks, Caitlin.
Yeah.
Tom, great to see you.
Yeah, same here.
Take
All
care.
right. We have about 15 minutes left. So next up, our next speaker will be Craig Kessler, the Executive Director for California Alliance for Golf. And we've left him 15 minutes, so this should be good.
I don't have a long report today, but I will make a personal observation, the same one I made just before we came aboard together, is that you've been around a long time when you start appearing on bills with the sons and daughters of those people you worked with very closely 30 years ago. So I worked with Rick Sessinghouse Sr. when he was a top official in the City of LA's Recreation and Parks Department, and of course was extraordinarily supportive of golf and spawned really one of the best teachers in the United States. So it's good to see that thing come full circle. And I had the pleasure a couple of weeks ago with playing with the son of a woman who was a major labor leader during that same era, who's now long retired, who worked with golf very effectively in the municipal sphere. So Tom, maybe I might join you as the great throwback era. Anyway, so the reason you had me on the show was not to reminisce about the fact that I'm dealing with people who I first met when they were in cribs. But anyway, so we are actually in California at the end of our 2025 legislative session. I don't think there's any state that meets as often or as long as California. And there will be no special or emergency session this year because we have a special election with one issue on the ballot. And while that issue is extraordinarily important, it's not important for the golf industry in California. So we won't talk about that. I will say, as we end this session, the governor signed the two bills that we strongly supported. One of them, Senate Bill 72, that for the first time in the history of California sets targets on water supply and asks that the California Water Plan incorporate higher and higher targets moving towards 2050 to accommodate for population growth, economic growth, and the fact that aridification is squeezing out that supply from Mother Nature. Also, Senate Bill 31, that really increases the ability of municipalities in particular to access recycled water for their parks and their cemeteries and their golf courses and their other large landscapes. Tellingly, the authors of both those bills and the sponsor in one case, Senate Bill 72, actively sought the support of the California Alliance for Golf. I can tell you that's something that 6-7 years ago, no one even knew we existed, let alone think that our support for something might be important getting legislation through. We certainly supported both of those. They're consistent with the long-term interests of the golf community, and we'll leave it at that. The one bill I'm sure everyone is aware of that was in our sights to defeat, and we took the lead in knocking it down, and that was Senate Bill 51 that would have taken California, would have reversed a preference expressed by the voters in 2018 to go to permanent daylight time and substitute permanent standard time. We've been down, I've explained that one a lot. I expect that one is likely to come back, but it got defeated sufficiently early in the process, not only here, but in the other states in the Pacific time zone, that maybe, just maybe, we'll get lucky and we won't have to fight that one again. And I won't go into the great details. Say also that as we close out the session, there are just a number of things, both in the bills that got passed, those things that got signed. One thing in particular that caught my attention, Governor Newsom vetoed a bill that would have required data centers, AI in other words, to report their water use. For those who don't know, those data centers consume depending on the climate zone of the data zone and the climate zone of a golf course, somewhere between 20 and 40 times more water than a golf course does in a year. Both, obviously, data centers are key to our economy, and that's why the governor vetoed it. But keep in mind, there is an entire shift that's gone on in recognition of the fact that water supply is key to the viability of the state. Clearly, it's key to a water-dependent industry like golf. And so I cite those kinds of things, not necessarily because I want to applaud the governor's veto of that bill, because actually the reporting of that would demonstrate that not only with data centers, but with all kinds of industrial uses and all kinds of either non-industrial uses, golf uses far less water than many of them. This is not obvious to the general public because when you drive by a data center, you don't see 120 acres of green in the middle of the summer. And so you don't assume that it's using the kind of water that it does, but it does. And those kinds of facts, ultimately, it isn't so much that they favor the golf industry, but they put our water use in context. And all of those are good trends that I would point at as we move towards the next legislative session. And as we move towards that session, I think there's a good chance, not guaranteed yet, that we'll do something we haven't done. So far, our advocacy efforts have been like the advocacy efforts of a lot of interests in Sacramento are about plain defense. They're about knocking back bills that we call public golf endangerment acts, or knocking back bans on the use of fertilizers in the coastal zone, or other things like that. But I think for the first time, we're coalescing around maybe using the process the other way, the proactive way instead of the reactive way. We're seriously considering and getting an extraordinarily warm reception so far in our inquiries, in our due diligence, on running a bill that would do for the golf industry in California, particularly the public golf industry, what various versions of what are called restaurant, reservation, anti-piracy acts have done for about 16 states thus far, and tellingly, big states like New York and Florida, in that it restricts third-party the third-party brokering of reservations, whether, and of course, in the restaurant industry, it's reservations to get dinner or lunch. In ours, it would be a reservation for a tea time, to only to agreements between a facility's owner, whether the owner is private or public makes no difference, and the third-party company, so that those that sort of operate without agreement, without approval, without even permission, and often siphon off some of the monies that might be more appropriately and better used from the perspective of a golfer by either the owner or the manager of a facility to a third party. It's particularly insidious in the municipal sector, because the reality is that most municipalities in California, even San Diego with Torrey Pines, as much as it's hard to think that Torrey Pines, with the fees it charges, now those are non-resident fees to its residents, in terms of pure market rates, they could charge considerably higher. And because they don't, that creates a market for someone to use modern technology to get those reservations and resell them at the value perhaps that the market would fetch. So this isn't just a case of protecting the kinds of facilities that we see. They're really, and particularly in Los Angeles County, many of them are quite price controlled. And that's simply the political mission of those jurisdictions, and that's their business. Some do it more than others. It also protects daily fee facilities, and even something like Torrey Pines. It's hard to believe that's actually under what market rates. That is just how far out of whack, I hope everyone on this call understands, the supply to demand ratio is in golf. We're really giddy, and we should be, about how golf has exploded in the last 5 or 6 years. And COVID is very much in our rearview mirror. So it's pretty apparent that, and maybe not all of that is going to stick when we hit a recession. We have to hit a recession at some point, but a substantial amount of it is going to stick. And I think golf recognizes that sometimes we took those things for granted in the past. The good news is that everyone realizes we're going to keep that audience as much as possible moving forward. But that makes it all the more important, and this gives a possibility to do, and there actually is one state of New York, that does have a live bill that would do for their golf community in that state what their state has already done for the restaurant community. And when I say we're optimistic about it, is we've had some meetings in Sacramento, and there's almost, and I would say the reaction trended from warmth to downright solicitation. They can't wait to see such a bill. So again, I do want to point out that I see it, and I've seen it many years working when I worked with I still work with the SCGA, but when I was kind of the lead in that organization, I can't begin to tell you the ways in which at local and regional levels for years now, advocacy in golf has been securing for golf communities, not just swatting down bad things, but for the most part in the last 6 or 8 years in particular, promoting good things for the industry, whether it's with water providers, both retailers and wholesalers, or with municipal governments. It's all been positive. And to those of you listening in Northern California, I'm going to say something rather bold, but something I think you understand. You haven't seen benefit of that. And I want to add that even though my bandwidth is quite strained, and the California Alliance for Golf is certainly fledgling and strained, it's still called the California Alliance for Golf, not the Southern California Alliance for Golf. So keep that in mind, and don't hesitate to press my bandwidth even further. I'll let you know when it snaps. I'm capable of doing that. But I think it's important to recognize that advocacy is not just defense, it's also offense. You expect to hear considerably more about our effort to actually run a bill. Golf has never done that in the state of California. And I think there's some enthusiasm. And I think I'm not going to explain all that we're doing, but doing all those things in terms of reaching out to those who might be potential opponents to make sure they're not, and to reach out to all those who are great supporters and make sure that they're on board and their support is aligned with us. It's a lot harder to run. It's easier to actually defeat a bill than it is to pass a bill. It's not easy to get things passed in the state of California. And well, that's a good thing, because there's so many bills that we don't want to see passed get proposed. So with that, as we move into this sort of dead time in the legislative session, but it's not going to be dead if we're going to be running a bill. It's not going to be dead as we anticipate setting a little bit more groundwork for an anticipation of another run at standard time. The only thing I'll say about that is, as with so many things, it may seem strange to you if you're not involved in politics, but the believers in standard time are true believers. They are organized, they are funded, they have an organization, they have research arms. It's built by sleep researchers and sleep disorder specialists. We actually stipulate to their arguments. There may be a marginal preference or something that's slightly better for standard time over permanent daylight time. That may be the case. And if your whole life revolves around sleep research, and that is the only issue upon which this is to be decided, then so be it. But there's the matter of economics. There's the matter of other health considerations in terms of the fact that the federal government tells us, their Bureau of Labor Statistics says that 90% of active recreation occurs in the evening hours, not the early morning hours. There are other consequences. There are actually public safety consequences. There are credible studies that claim that during permanent daylight time would result in 7 to 9% less property crime. That's important too. It isn't just a marginal difference in sleep patterns. So moving forward, and I see we're coming, I'm going to actually do something that many think I don't do. I'm going to yield the floor even before the time limit's quite up, to give everyone a chance to do a little bit of a close. But I'll simply wrap up by saying we had a really good session this year. The profile of the California Alliance for Golf and the industry it represents keeps going up and up and up. I continue to be, I shouldn't be surprised anymore, but I'm certainly gratified. We recently visited the offices of the incoming pro tem in the state Senate, and their legislative director made reference of things that we did in previous sessions that came to their note. So we're being noticed, we're getting stronger, we're getting better. And I'll simply say, I hope everyone understands that unlike maybe 20 or 30 or 40 years ago, much of golf's business fate and success is going to be more and more dependent as time goes forward on what happens in the public arena, not just the private arena of our own facilities. Not that that private arena still doesn't take precedence, but there is that public arena as well. So I hope you'll keep that in mind as you are, as I always say, to a gathering of golf professionals. Those of us who work in the, we think we're important, but the truth of the matter is that most golfers, you're the contact point. What they will think about golf will come more from you than it will come from me. So keep that in mind, and also engage a few of them in some of these conversations of whether it's legislation, regulation, or just the general impression of the industry. Because if we are perceived well when we sit down with legislators and regulators, we get pretty good results. When we're perceived as elitist and aloof and all those things you've heard about, which are inaccurate, we don't get a good result. So help the game out, help yourself out too, because I think everyone on this call recognizes that if you're working in a sector that's growing, it's good for you. If you're working in a sector that's shrinking, it's not so good. So let's keep it growing across all ways and move it forward. And with that, at 10:59, I'm going to sign off, Caitlin.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Craig, and thanks for all you do. And actually, some positive news here in NorCal. We are kind of getting a advocacy committee going here in the section. So I know Len Dumas, our past executive director, is really kind of leading that, and we're going to work with him. And so yeah, it's positive for NorCal as well. So we appreciate you, Craig, and all you do. Thank you for being here this morning. So just
I don't know if we're going to get Caitlin back.
Tom, you might want to have to close it out.
Yeah. But thanks, everybody. It was a pleasure being back, Craig, and of course, Rick. Craig, it's always nice to talk with you and listen to what you bring forth, and we appreciate that. I believe the next chat is November 21st. Yes, That's what it says on the notes. So we look forward to seeing you there. Nikki will be back at that time. And it was a pleasure being with you here today. Take care.